All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Wealth Building for Dummies podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Demian, and I am joined today with Renji Matthew back in the studio after we recorded one yesterday with his wife talking about social media and how to blow up your social media account. Today, we're going to be talking about why you should be using credit cards versus using a debit card and the benefits that come with credit cards versus debit cards. So, thank you guys for tuning in. And Renji, why don't you go ahead and get us started off? What is one of the benefits to using a credit card versus using a debit card?
One of the biggest things is building credit, right? I think on an earlier podcast we talked about Dave Ramsey, and his biggest thing is not having credit cards, cutting up all your credit cards and all this stuff. Which again, we've talked about how if you're trying to get out of debt or be on a budget, it makes sense. But if you're trying to build wealth, you need to be able to play with your credit. Um, and I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people don't think about with credit cards, how much credit you can build, and there's different ways of building credit too. Something that I recommend a lot of parents, because this is something my dad would do with me, and I thought it was genius, and I wish like everyone did this. My parents actually got a credit card, or they had credit cards, and they put me as authorized user on there, but never got me a card. So I never knew that I had a credit card with an as an authorized user. But because my name was on that, it was building credit for me without me even realizing it. So when I was young and working, I already had a credit score above 800, and I didn't do anything to earn that. So it's a really big thing for parents to help set up their kids for financial success for the future.
I didn't know that he did that for you. You should
Yeah.
tell Nina right now that that's the next TikTok you guys are doing because that's a good point. And we didn't even talk about this pre-show that we were going
Yeah.
to chat about it. But no, you're right. And so number one question I think most people would have hearing that is what age does my child have to be to set that up for them? And do you know the answer to that?
Honestly, I don't know how early my parents did it, but I
Okay.
don't think I was 18 yet. So as long
Yeah.
as you're not the primary on the card, I think they can add as many people as you want on there. It's just my parents never told me I had
Yeah.
a credit card, which because
Yeah.
they never ordered one for me. They just add me as an authorized user.
Authorized user.
So that helps build your credit without actually giving you, because if they would have given me a card, I would have made the mistake of going and using it without responsibility. So I think
Yeah.
they did smart by not getting me an actual card and actually putting me on there so build my credit good.
No, for sure. Yeah, the purpose of it isn't for you to have access to their lines of credit for spending, right? But it's just to build up credit history. I think that's all it really does.
Yeah.
Just to build up credit history and to show that, hey, he's an authorized user on this card and the parents manage the money well. So it's building up your credit. And yeah, I don't know if there is an age limit either. That'd be something we'd have to look up, but I don't see why there isn't because I have heard of people doing this even like for their children as toddlers.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Yeah, that's benefit number one that I didn't even realize you were going to go down, but I love it. And for benefit number two, not only can you use it obviously for building up credit so that, in the future, if you have a good credit score, you can borrow money for a mortgage or for a car loan at lower rates and it saves you money. But the second benefit of using credit cards over debit cards would be the extra protection that comes built in from fraud. And I have a story, probably 8 years ago or so. I was actually out to dinner with a few friends on a Friday night. I remember this because it was like my first experience with ever having money being taken from me by a scammer, or, some fraudulent service. So I got a call from my credit card company saying, "Hey, we just noticed like two large transactions, across the world from where you normally are. Are you traveling or are you on vacation at all?" And I was like, "No, I'm at home right now." And what's going on? And I think it was like a couple $1,000 purchases or something like that. And they immediately stopped the transactions and they refunded me all of my money. And there was like no questions asked on my end.
Hmm.
So credit card companies can do that, and they have extra protection in place. Whereas a debit card is a direct card directly into your bank account and all of your money, and they don't have the extra protection in place where if something happens like that, they could just waive it off and refund you. I know in some circumstances I've heard like horror stories where people don't get their money back at all.
Yeah, that's
You
actually
have
happened to me.
Oh, really? Okay.
So
You got all the stories today.
yeah, so I told you like we used to be big Dave Ramsey people before we got into real estate and all that stuff. So we were all about not using credit cards and using debit cards and stuff. And yeah, that happened to me once. And the good thing is it depends on your bank. It depends on your bank and what there's a limit that they go off of, and if it's looks sketchy, they cut it off at a certain amount. It might be 500, 1,000, whatever it is. So they cut it off at that point because like if you're overdrafted in your bank account to a certain amount, yeah, they cut it off after a certain amount. That's what happened to me. So thankfully it wasn't like thousands of dollars, but it depleted my bank account, at least that account. And yeah, and I've had it happen so many times with credit cards, but all, like you said, they have those stop losses or protection to get your money back or stuff like that. With the debit card, they don't have too many of those protections.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. What's another benefit of using a credit card over a debit card, Renji?
Yeah, this is something you talked about all the points and how you could use the points, and I didn't realize this until you mentioned it before that they were. I mean, I guess I never thought about it, but how those can be tax-free usage, which is crazy too. More
Yeah.
things you learn about. You do learn something every day, right?
Absolutely. And we love tax free here. We love tax free. Right. So yeah, all your points grow and build up tax free, whether that's for, cashback points, airline miles, gift cards. I know I've used credit card points a few times for gift cards before. All that's accessible tax free. And I think if you use a business card, this would be something, consult with your CPA. But this is not legal or tax advice. But I think if you use a business credit card too, and then you get points on your business credit card, I think you can use those points for personal expenses and it's still tax free.
Yeah, I would think it would be similar because it's the points for no matter how you use it. So I
Yeah,
would think it would be the same.
absolutely. So even an additional benefit. And then I think the
Mhm.
last one that we were going to cover today would just be the fact that it can be better for like large purchases or in the event of an emergency. Obviously, if you don't
Mhm.
have the funds inside of your banking account, your checking account, you can't really use your debit card. But your credit
Mhm.
card allows you to kind of expand your financial capability to make a large purchase or in the event of an emergency where it gives you time to pay it off and to pay it back. And of
Yep.
course, with credit cards, be careful. Make sure you be responsible with them. Don't let the credit get too out of debt or too out of control, because then
Mhm.
you can be paying high interest rates on that money, right? But as long as you're keeping your credit cards under control, keeping your debt under control, there's a lot of benefits that come from using your credit card versus just swiping your debit. And Renji, was there any other benefits that I didn't think about and you wanted to go over before we wrap up today?
No, I don't. I think you covered everything. The only thing I would warn against, though, is I wish, there was more education out there about all this stuff when I was growing up because my parents, I loved them to death. They were really good with their finances and everything, but, I was never taught how to manage a checkbook or how to, pay bills, stuff like that. So, when I first moved away for college and I was living on my own and working and all that stuff, and first time I had a chance to get a credit card, I was like, oh, I got a credit card, and I used to joke around like swipe, swipe, swine. I don't have to worry about money, but you
Yeah,
do. It's gonna cause problems, So,
yeah,
and I got into debt as a college student, which is never a good thing. You're already going to college and paying debt and stuff like that, so you can get in a lot of trouble, especially if you don't have that education. So I think my biggest advice I can give is not just educate yourself, but also your kids to come and stuff like that, because they learn by watching what you do. And if you're able to sit with them and explain why you're doing certain things you're doing the way you do it, then they'll learn from that. And maybe if you also show them, if you're open about it and show them the mistakes you've made, maybe they'll be able to stay away from it. Kids don't always like to listen, but at least if you give them that information, it'll be in the back of their head. So when they come across that cross point where they could make that decision a good one or a bad one, at least they'll know, oh, my dad said this or my mom said this, so they'll remember. But if that conversation never happened, they're not going to know what to do. So,
100%. Yeah, that's a good point. And something else I thought of as you were talking, and maybe this will, stem off into a total new episode we can do, but when you're swiping a card, whether it's credit or debit card, it's a totally different feeling than when you're paying for things in cash. And I remember seeing a study on it that, like, if you only bought things in cash, you would spend way less money than you
yep.
would if you could just swipe a card. Because when you're swiping a card, you're taking your card back and putting it into your wallet. Like, there's not a psychological loss there of you actually losing money in your
There's no
brain.
pain.
There's no
Yeah.
pain. Yeah. But when you're giving up cash, so you take out a $100 bill and you pay $80 for dinner, like, you physically only get $20 back maybe, right? And you feel that loss from the money that you had. So
Mm-hmm.
emotionally or psychologically, I think it's more of a psychological thing that, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
people, when they get a credit card, they can just swipe, swipe, swipe. And, it's crazy how quickly things can add up.
Yep.
$20 here, $40 there, $50 here, 20, 30, 40, 50. Like, that's already probably $250,
Yeah.
And if you would have had that in cash, obviously you could have, kind of watched it go down, but it's so easy to swipe versus paying and giving up money and actually losing that money for the transaction, which is
Yep.
lost when you do use a credit card. And that's probably why they give us so many points and they incentivize us with these airline miles, because they know us humans are
Yeah.
thinking about the points, we're thinking about the reward rather than the loss of actually spending money and it
Mm-hmm.
actually coming out of our account, because we're not, truly exchanging paper dollar bills for our services or our goods, whatever we're buying,
Yep.
so that's awesome. And I think this is a good little, quick show just to talk about some of the benefits to, building wealth and being better with your money and being better with finances, because, yeah, we're not taught these things in school. But like you mentioned, teaching your children how to properly use a credit card,
Mm-hmm.
adding them as an authorized user is a great tip to help any child, go into college and graduate high school and have a decent credit score,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you as a parent are responsible with your credit card, then you're going to give them a good credit score. Don't add them as an authorized user if you struggle with the swiping yourself. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, you don't want to start them off in a bad position.
Yeah, no, no, no. Awesome. Well, cool. Anything else you want to add? I think that was a good little show.
No, I think that's it. I think we talked. I'm sure there's more stuff that we don't. And that's the awesome thing about this podcast is we're always learning too. So hopefully you guys that are watching, you guys get to learn with us. So, and like Kyle always mentions, comment and send us messages of stuff that you want us to talk about. And if it's something we know about, we'll talk about. If it's not, we could do some research and learn together also.
Absolutely. 100%. Awesome. And with that, make sure you guys, like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for watching the Wealth Building for Dummies podcast. Take it easy.